Bye-bye birdie at Twitter. Elon Musk freed the website's little blue bird today and replaced it with a black X. Question, according to CBS News tech consultant Ian Scher.
Is he going to keep it as a hugely influential social media company, or does he want to do something else?
The bird remains on the Twitter app. The Dow is up 79 points. S&P ahead 7. This is CBS News.
Need to hire quality candidates fast? You need Indeed, the end-to-end hiring solution. Attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Visit Indeed.com/credits.
With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. A Milwaukee police officer didn't do anything wrong in a February shooting that left a man dead. The DA says Officer Kevin Hansen was justified when he shot and killed Herman Lucas near 91st and Silver Spring in February. Lucas first fled in a vehicle, then ran away, and despite repeated commands to drop a weapon, he refused and even picked it up after dropping it, leading to the fatal outcome. Briggs & Stratton is in search of a new CEO as Steve Andrews, who led the company since emerging from bankruptcy 3 years ago, has departed for personal reasons. The Wauwatosa-based company has named Christina Cerniglia as the interim CEO. During Andrews' tenure, Briggs & Stratton diversified its product lines, but also experienced layoffs and production shutdowns in specific areas. With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Does your financial strategy include your hopes and dreams? What matters most to you? For over 100 years, ThriveFund has helped clients like you find financial solutions for life's important goals. Explore a full range of options, from financial advice and investments to insurance, banking, and generosity programs. To have a heart-to-heart about your finances, contact Mandy Roberts, who you may recognize as Mandy Wright. Call her at 715-470-1303. 715-470-1303. Mandy Roberts proudly serves the central Wisconsin area. For more details, visit thrivefund.com/disclosure.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
We've all felt left out. And for people who move to this country, that feeling...
What if I just, instead of giving out the talk and text line, just started giving up Robin Voss's number all the time? 844-96-PARTY. What is it?
Write it down. 608-237-9163. Call now.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin! If the election was today, who would you vote for? And how much is it based on facts versus feelings? Because I just have this inkling that so many people are their feelings about the candidates and specifically about Joe Biden is just how they feel about him, which is, I think, how largely we all mostly vote, as much as we want to be rational actors.
We vote with our gut.
And so, simple question that I'm sure many talk show hosts before me have asked so far this year, if the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. And it's also, do you not know? Because that's a valid answer too. And it's probably the right answer because we're still over a year away. And we've touched on this a little bit before as far as what the numbers say versus what approval ratings are, and not even just of Biden, but of people's feelings about the economy, feelings about how the country's doing, and how that matches up to the actual measurements we typically use to gauge how things are going. And, I think there's a lot of people on the left or independents who can say, who will say like, yeah, Biden's done a pretty good job, but he's just so old, who are like not fired up about him again.
Right.
And just based on the age thing and some gaffes and stuff like that are kind of like, really? This guy again? And then obviously Republicans are hammering on Joe Biden's America as the land of, violent crimes, surging illegal immigration, out of control inflation. But the thing is, like, the actual numbers don't always support that. And I bring this up partially because I read some stuff this morning as far as what the numbers say, but I also over the weekend was up north and went to Lac du Flambeau, and then we also went over to Hayward. So hello, Hayward.
I'm so jealous.
And checked out the Lumberjack World Championship, although we timed it a little poorly because we didn't look at the schedule. So we bought tickets, and like the grounds were open all day, but the actual like final event didn't like start until 5:30.
Oh man.
So we got to see the grounds. We got to see a axe throwing competition. We got to see some fun stuff and kind of get the vibe for what it was. But we didn't decide because it was like an hour and a half from Lac du Flambeau. So we drove back, but got to check out Hayward. Got to see from a distance the largest muskie statue in the world because they close at 4, which was very early.
In the summer?
In the summer and during the Lumberjack World Championship. I was a little surprised that they weren't still letting, because it's $10 a person. I was like, that feels like a lot of money you guys are deciding not to capitalize on.
What, the muskie needs to rest?
I don't know. But so Mike got up in like a hill and got a picture of it because they strategically place a lot of trees. So you can't just take a picture without paying for it. But not surprisingly, in driving up to Lac du Flambeau, driving west to Hayward, driving east back to the cabin, saw a lot of Let's Go Brandon signs. Saw, not surprisingly, to each their own, no judgment, but nevertheless saw a lot. So one homemade sign that Mike was very excited about. We were driving, he saw there was a homemade sign, literally stopped and pulled a Yui because he wanted to go see what it said. And so it was Biden spelled out, and B was for I just said this. Didn't I just tell you this before?
You did, and I'm drawing a complete
And now B was
blank,
for I was for idiot, D was for dummy, E was for empty, N was for naive, and B was for, it wasn't bonehead. I can't remember what the B was for. If you can think of a B word for an idiot, that's what it was.
Bumbler?
Bumbler? Now I can't remember. But so anyways, part of the state that is very still pro-Trump, not excited about Biden. So I mention it because I see these numbers, I saw those signs. I kind of feel like the vibe I get in general from anyone but besides hardcore Democrats is meh on Biden. Like, it's like, I'll vote for him because it's like, again, like a not Republican. It's like, I'm not voting for the Republican.
Right.
But it's interesting because there's a lot of arguments as far as facts of why this has been a pretty good presidency. So, in the first one, the violent crime, and this includes Milwaukee. I saw a headline from last week that violent crime is down in Milwaukee. stealing cars,
That's still way up there.
Still way up there. But as far as homicides are going down, and this is a violent crime surged across the country post-pandemic, and it was a huge concern in the 2022 election. But homicides were down 9% in the first half of this year, and in over the same period last year. And so that's generally down across the board. Illegal border crossings are down. It's dropped to the lowest level in over 2 years this past June for the first full month under Biden's new restrictive asylum rule, which makes it much harder to attain asylum. Obviously, some people, pro-immigration people, are not happy about this. There's a legal case pending that could change that, but at least for now, that policy has curbed illegal border crossings. Inflation is cooling.
And compared to the rest of the world, our inflation rate is manageable. They're dealing with double digits in many countries.
And so, and we're going to get, I think the Fed this week again is going to make a decision on interest rates. I think it comes this week. I don't know which day.
Wednesday, Thursday,
Wednesday
maybe?
or Thursday. And there's been a manufacturing boom across the country.
Not to mention all the bridge projects.
All the bridge projects, of course. And so there's been the job growth for manufacturing. There's been 800,000 manufacturing jobs added nationwide. And so it's you see all this, and it's obviously this is the burden of the campaign to make all these connections and have it resonate with voters. But it's funny that on its face, I don't know if it is right now. What do you think? If you had an election today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. Or similarly, how much do you think that you use facts versus your gut instinct when it comes to voting decisions? 844-96-PARTY. What do you think, Jane?
Well, I know how I would vote
Today.
Yes.
Will be Biden?
Yes. And again, I certainly understand the reluctance about his age. He is not a young man. And as you said, he has made some gaffes. At the same time, I think physically, for his age, he's in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I think he's all there and is actually able to put sentences together in a structure that when you read it back, it actually makes sense, as opposed to the front runner for the other party, who is not in great physical shape. And I'm sorry, but they can make as many posters of Donald Trump wearing armor, dressed like a gladiator. That isn't who he is. Sorry to be the one to point that out. I know it's harsh.
Is there anyone running, even if it's a long shot, is there anyone running on the Republican ticket that you could hold your nose and vote for?
No.
Chris Christie? No.
Chris Christie?
Asa Hutchinson? No.
No.
Any of the guys who are actually running counter to a Trump mega culture war thing?
No.
Tim Scott?
No. And Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson aren't even going to be players in this.
I know.
They're not. They're just not. And neither is Mike Pence.
Well, Mike Pence seems dead in the water.
Well,
just because, it's these that's how I feel about the Ron DeSantis campaign too. Is it's this appeal to MAGA. It's I'm not Trump. It's just this walking this line of not really criticizing Trump because you need that base, but that base probably is never going to leave Trump. So it's who are you actually appealing to? Because there's probably, I would think that there's a lot of independents and moderates who you're still too extreme for, who are over the culture war thing and who are not necessarily in favor of teaching middle school students, slavery had some benefits.
Yes,
but not to go down that rabbit hole.
All the things you can pick up when people are whipping you.
And
but
so
anyway,
that's kind of how I feel about the Pence thing too. It's who are your voters? Who are you appealing to? But yeah, I would love to hear from you as far as if the election was today, who would you vote for? And how much, if you're being honest with yourself, is it off of gut instinct versus actually looking at the numbers? 844-967-2789.
We will come back with a call on the other side of this break. We have Don on the line. As Kristen said, if you want to check in, you can text and or call at 844-967-2789.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back in just a minute. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
My life, I'll feel it. I wish I'd never met you, girl. You'll never come again. Feelings like I've never lost you. And feelings like I'll never have you again in my life. Feeling, oh, feeling, oh, feeling again in my arms. Feeling, oh, feeling.
If you care about animals or crops, you probably care how the weather could impact both.
It's summer in Wisconsin, and the success of your efforts often depends on knowing the forecast. Count on your local Civic Media weather team for all the information you need.
Crops' roots are also growing deeper in search for water, which is bad news because when rain finally falls, it will sit shallow and be absorbed in the top layers of the soil.
Your weather and more for your part of Wisconsin.
On your local Civic Media radio station and streaming on the app.
Hi, I'm Mandy Roberts, financial advisor with Trident. I'm here to help you assess your finances and find solutions to meet your needs. Let's ensure you have a strategy for success. To get started, call 715-470-1303. That's 715-470-1303.
This summer, 540 AM WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 540 AM WAUK.
Did you know your favorite shows and hosts are active on social media too? Find Civic Media on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and be part of the conversation happening there. And go to our website, civicmedia.us, to learn more about the Civic Media Network.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Daytime highs approaching 86 this afternoon under partly cloudy skies. North winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Lows level off around 64. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. Lots of sunshine tomorrow. Highs level off around 88. Low 90s Wednesday with a chance for scattered storms. Warmer Thursday with highs in the mid-90s. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 75 degrees.
Joe Biden had the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, labor unions. And he still is working on it.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Bett.
What a vicious attack on Biden's record so far.
It's obviously, I'm sure you've heard that by now. If you have not, that is a speech that Marjorie Taylor Greene gave. And I think it was in the attempt to list all those things as bad things.
Yes.
Of the socialist Joe Biden and all these things he's doing. But the way it came off to many people is, well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So the Democrats turned it into an ad, which is pretty funny. But I think it goes back to the topic at hand, which is, kind of a conversation about facts over feelings or feelings over facts. And I'm going to put myself like I too, if the election was today, I would vote for Joe Biden. But it's not because if I'm being totally honest, I'm like pumped about Joe Biden. And yet the numbers should prove otherwise. Like things when you pay attention to the news too much feel bad, which I certainly do because that's my job. But when you look at a lot of numbers, things are trending in a good direction.
Yes.
And yet I think there's a lot of independent left-leaning people who are like me, who are like not pumped on Biden. There's certainly a lot of Republicans who are like running on inflation, crime, immigration, that those numbers are trending in ways that don't prove that point. So if the election was today, who would you vote for? We got Don Brown first.
Yes, we do. Good morning, Don. What do you think?
Hi, Jane. Hi, Kristen. The one issue I'd love to put to bed is this whole age thing. I hear so many people saying he's too old. The president should be under 70. And it's like, are we asking the president to build a house or to do construction projects or excavation or anything that requires like physical skill sets and all that? We're not, right? We want someone with a sharp mind, with years of experience, in which he has over 50, with strong relationships with world leaders and other stakeholders around the world. And, how about we just focus on his record? And if we're going to look at the strength of a person, like, look at all the tragedy this guy's had to endure in his personal life. Look at he was a single father for many years before he was remarried. So many things. And I, like yourselves, I was never a huge Joe Biden fan, but when he was vice president, he showed a lot of mettle during the Obama administration and can take credit for a lot of those big wins in the Obama administration. And how come, let's bring that up instead of the age issue. If we're really worried about that, then let's dig into health and wellness. Like, Biden's probably in better physical shape than JFK was when he was in the White House, considering all the pain he had to live with. So that's my
that's your take. So you would vote for Joe Biden if the election was today?
As of right now, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the call, Don. Let's go to Greg. Greg, who would you vote for if the election was today?
Well, I'm looking for that middle ground kind of third party candidate to come, in and do that. Let me just say two things really quickly. I've learned the damage it causes the election when people are one issue voters. Okay, my issue for a while, I'll be honest, I'll admit it, was the whole abortion issue, but then I discovered as I got later in life, pro-life means you're pro all of life, not just baby, killing. But my second thing is, so we can't be a one issue voter. And I'm not going to blame Biden for the inflation issue because, as you mentioned, Kristen, inflation right now is a world problem. So all these people who want to blame Biden for the higher gas prices, first of all, I don't drive, so, but anyway, I don't have to worry about that, I guess, but, higher whatever prices, I guess I can't see that. And, so I'm not going to be one issue voter, but I'm not necessarily sold on the two people we have right now.
The two leads. So that would be Trump and Biden. Are there any other Republican candidates that, even if they're polling super low, regardless of polls, that you're like, I could live with this guy or woman, with Nikki Haley?
Honestly, if Republicans would stop, and I am a Christian, but if Republicans would stop toting the pro-life evangelical Christian line, and like I said, I am a Christian, I'm probably more pro-life, but I I don't want to be lumped in as radical, as radical anything,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm looking at, like, and I hate that it's always the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that is the problem with the two-party system. We're coming up against a break, Greg. So thank you so much for the call. When we come back from our next break, we still got a couple people on the line, so please hold on. But if the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. And if you're being really honest with yourself, is it facts over feelings or feelings over facts when it comes to your gut instinct on who you want to vote for? 844-967-2789. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News Brief. Israel's far-right majority has passed a new law that weakens the power of the country's Supreme Court, and opponents are considering their options. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer.
There has been talk of a general strike. Protesters say they're in it for the long haul. We're just going to have to see. But the fear is that there's going to be civil unrest that turns to violence.
It's not just places like Phoenix. Odyssey meteorologist Craig Allen says it'll heat up from the Carolinas through New England this week.
There will be extreme heat for the first time this season for several days in a row, and very limited amounts of showers and thunderstorms during that time.
There's a pretrial hearing today for ex-Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira, accused of leaking government secrets. Pentagon correspondent Cammie McCormick.
The 21-year-old Teixeira was ordered to remain behind bars while his case plays out. His lawyers are now asking a different judge to reverse that.
CBS News Brief. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
Your hometown radio, refreshed, keeping you informed, entertained, and connected on the Civic Media Network, civicmedia.us.
With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Over the weekend, Milwaukee experienced yet another surge of shootings, with a double-digit tally of 13 people being shot from Saturday through early this morning. Yesterday, 6 people were shot, with a 37-year-old man killed. Overnight, 3 more people were shot, among them 2 who were wounded in a double shooting. With a cancer-causing chemical in their apartment complex, the owner of the units say they'll pay for relocation efforts. Cypress Bayshore Residential owns the Glendale Lydell apartments. Last week, hazardous levels of the chemical trichloroethylene were found in one of the buildings, which required the evacuation of 6 units. The apartment owners say they'll pay to relocate the impacted residents to their other properties or provide them with $500 to relocate elsewhere. With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Living happily ever after isn't always a reality. If you're over 50 and are considering divorce, attorney Andrea Gage with the Everson Law Firm can provide the guidance you need. Andrea focuses on silver divorces, the kind that get more complicated over time and present unique challenges. A family, multiple properties, significant assets. Andrea and the team at Everson Law have the experience to protect your interests. Call Everson Law to set up an appointment with Andrea today. It's never too late to be happy. Everson Law, 920-435-3734. 4.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
People won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
You are never far away from your favorite radio station. We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. And if you missed your favorite show or game, listen to...
Hiya, Bobby.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go for a ride?
Sure, Ken.
Jump in.
I'm a Bobby girl in the Bobby world. Life in plastic, it's fantastic. You can brush my hair.
Well, welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we're still staying on the topic, but I will say Barbie.
Wow.
$155 million. But we will get to that later in today's segment or later in today's show. But the topic at hand right now is, if the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. We had a text on the text line asking if today's show is a rerun. It is not a rerun.
It is not a rerun. Unfortunately, I can't respond to all texts, so I can't tell you that we're live.
But we are live.
We are live.
It is Monday, July 24th. It's 81 degrees in Waukesha, and we are live. So if you were trying to call in, please keep trying to call in. 844-967-2789. And speaking of calling in, Jack from Merrimack, if the election was today, who would you vote for?
Well, there's no question. Given the so-called front runners, I definitely vote for Biden. Let me do a little bit of explanation because I've got a couple things I'd like to say about that. One of those is the first thing that has to happen is the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign has to get their act together. They've got to do things like, for instance, every place where there is broadband cable being installed out in the farming areas, they need to have one of those giant signs that looks like those Biden stickers that you saw on gas pumps saying, "I did this." Every time, every place where there is construction that is fixing our highways, they need to have a giant sign like that sticker that says, "I did this." Every place where there is lead lines being removed, like there were in front of my house just a few months ago, there needs to be a sign that says, which shows Biden pointing to it and saying, "I did this."
With the aviators on, right?
You got it.
You should join the campaign team, Jack.
But here's the other half of what I'd like to say. It seems that the elephant in the room, and yes, that is a very bad pun, is that virtually no one is talking about the attempted political coup that occurred with the fraudulent electors. These slates of electors that Johnson and others tried to present as legitimate to the vice president in an attempt to overturn legitimate election results have not even been disavowed by even one single member of the current Republican Party.
Yeah.
They haven't even been discussed in Congress. There are no hearings into it, much less the gerrymandered legislatures like we have in this state. Republicans need to completely repudiate both that attempt using the illegitimate electors as well as the physical violence which they continue to downplay and call things like tourist visit. I can't see how anyone in their right mind could possibly trust anything Republicans do or say until that's done, because that is much more dangerous than the obvious violent January 6th a physical attack on Congress. You can solve that by more police. But this illegal attempt to foist a political insurrection in the guise of being legal is it's something that we can't allow.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the call, Jack. Going over to Nancy. Nancy, if the election was today, who would you vote for?
Using both facts and feelings, I would definitely go with Biden.
Okay.
The GOP seems to only be the party of no. They have no platform. They have no sense. They just come up with these bizarre ideas that just don't have it. It's for media only.
Yeah.
And that's what gets their base wound up and may tip things in the other direction. A third party vote is a vote against Biden.
For sure.
It's a vote for GOP. I'm ticked off with people that vote third party because, quote unquote, both parties are the same. If you go to a wonderful website called Quora, Quora, and look at Bring Back Democracy and other sites like that, you'll find out just how bad the GOP is. And that's where I've gotten a lot of the facts. It's an international forum.
Yeah, I've heard it. Quora's
So
been
you
around for a
get-
while. It's like a place where you can ask questions and it's kind of crowdsourcing of people responding and giving answers, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's I'm seriously addicted to it. I admit that.
Good for you. Thanks so much for the call,
thanks a
Nancy.
lot, Nancy.
We gotta get one more call in during this segment. And so is it Tom from LA?
Our friend Tom from LA. Good morning, Tom.
Absolutely. Good morning, ladies. First off, we the people ultimately are the government, and we must never forget that. Second is that for the gentleman that called in and talked about pro-life, just because a woman has the right to choose does not mean that she's going to choose to actually terminate a pregnancy. So let's keep that in mind, that this whole thing is about putting women down. Third, I would definitely vote for Joe Biden, because Joe Biden knows how to delegate. Joe Biden knows how to put the people in place that actually, because no president, we are in a dictatorship in this country. We are democracy. And because of that point, it's what we the people want. And Joe Biden has shown that what he can do by putting the people in delegating that power. So therefore, we have the gains that we are having in this administration. I'd like to see him a little bit more like FDR. But I will take what I can get for right now, and that is Joe Biden. So I definitely would vote for Joe Biden. I think we also on the radio shows need to elevate Kamala Harris more, because they're going to be running against Kamala Harris. They're not going to run against Joe Biden, really, because they know that Joe Biden is kind of unbeatable, because he's just a good guy. So just watch. The Republicans will start going after Kamala Harris if they haven't already.
And it's interesting to me.
Definitely let's start elevating her.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the call, Tom. And it's interesting to me that they haven't, this whole time, that they haven't done more. That really this whole first term, she's been given unwinnable projects to be her focus, knowing that was, I don't know, just the whole time it seemed like a bad campaign strategy for a second term. If he was always planning to have a second term, is to not lift her up more and give her things that she can win at.
But what did Mike Pence do except stand there and look at Trump adoringly? Mike Pence didn't accomplish anything.
But I also don't think, I think that's a bad comparison, because Trump was always going to be the narcissist in the room. And so it's like in an actual strategic, like political campaigns, like I'm not sure that's the standard you want to hold yourself to.
Right.
And so, but I just agree with Tom in that there is they can't not have her run again because then it looks like it was a bad choice the first time around.
Right.
But they also just like biffed it, I think, as far as helping make her look good to strengthen the ticket going into a second term.
Well, and I had the opportunity over the weekend. I bought a book by Miles Taylor, who used to be in the Department of Homeland Security. And he was the anonymous author who had that piece in the New York Times while he was still within the Trump administration. And the book is called Blowback. It will blow your mind.
Blowback?
If you think that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the same intellectually, this will dispel that for you very quickly.
Who's the author?
Miles Taylor.
Miles Taylor.
Miles Taylor, called Blowback.
All right. The author behind the eye-popping CNN #1 New York Times bestseller. All right.
I mean, the amount of times that Donald Trump wanted to shoot the legs out from people who are trying to get into this country, wanted to bomb Mexico, the moat was actually something he asked about.
Is it different than Abbott's moat that he's doing right now with the like spiked buoys?
No, Trump wanted alligators and I think monkeys. So,
like the Wicked Witch of the West, like fly.
I'm not
like
in that.
flying
I'm not
monkeys?
in that brain, so I can't specify which monkey. But there are just wacko, terrifying things that I have no problem believing came out of Donald Trump's mouth. None whatsoever. None.
That's how you spent your weekend reading that book?
Most of yesterday. Every page is like, oh my God. What? Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting. I listened to Love It or Leave It out of the Crooked podcast or the Crooked Media podcast empire that was a bunch of ex-Obama guys. They've been around since 2016, and Love It or Leave It is like their live show comedy. He was like a joke writer for all the speech writing.
Oh, wow.
So like it's what I sometimes emulate this show to be, as if we actually had a writing team. But they had this last episode. This is going back to what Nancy said as far as third party stuff of this whole no labels shenanigans that's happening, and like who's actually behind no labels, and no labels is trying to say like both parties are the same. And so they had like funny but fake PSAs like, this episode is brought to you by No Labels, and they would argue on like trying to have like the false equivalency of what Republicans are doing versus what Democrats are doing, and what Trump is and what Biden is. And so it was, maybe I'll grab some of those because it's pretty funny. And what happened to the Forward Party? Because that was Andrew Yang's whole thing like a year or so ago. And that's different. No Labels is different than Forward as far as I know.
But I haven't heard, that's the first time I've heard Andrew Yang's name.
Since he started. That was last summer.
Yeah.
That was last summer when they were talking about.
He's just kind of disappeared.
And so I don't know what happened to them. And the thing that I liked about the Forward Party, besides the fact that they didn't actually have a platform, but what they at least were claiming when they were first talking about having a Forward Party was starting with smaller races. And like, I am the first one to say that the two-party system feels broken. In a two-party system, it feels like all you have to do is make people hate the other party enough that they would never vote for them instead of actually being for anything. And it's duopoly. And the only people who are benefiting from this are the parties themselves. And I think the strategy of having a third party, but only running in the top ticket of the presidential race every 4 years, instead of actually creating a party where you run. Because this is the problem with two parties is not just at the presidency. This is the problem with so many of our races. I mean, I don't know that I shouldn't know this number off the top of my head. How many elected officials there are in the country that are partisan positions, and having the emphasis be on actually building another option that is viable, that has a platform and gives people, that is filling a void that the two parties that we have right now do not. But why does it always have to start with the presidency? Because that's when it seems like it's just a grift versus something that is real and something that can grow.
We do have one more text that I'd like to get in, if you don't mind, Kristen. John from the Falls, good morning. This would be an easy choice for me. Here's why. My main concerns are climate, gun control, infrastructure, and the economy. The Republican Party as a whole has shown it's not interested in any of the first three things on my list. As far as the economy, America has fared much better than most of the rest of the world coming out of the pandemic. Whether the GOP wants to admit it or not, the numbers don't lie. And by the way, presidents overseeing the economy during the last three financial crises were Reagan, Bush, and Donald Trump. Nice job, fellas. Oh, and by the way, another comment. If you use a slur in your text, then I'm really unlikely to answer your phone call ever. Just so you know.
Ever. If you calling us names will not make us want to engage with you.
Not going to help you.
We also have another text from Oshkosh. I think the Biden versus Trump vote is more clear cut than Biden versus any other Republican. Like if I were to vote for Biden, I would vote for Biden if Trump was the nominee. But if Christie got the nomination, I don't know who I'd vote for right now. So interesting. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, it's Shark Week. So we're going to play a quiz. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin.
Come on, Barbie, let's go party.
Oh, I'm having so much fun.
Well,
One call can do it all. Your business's message can be broadcast across the entire state of Wisconsin through the Civic Media network of stations, or we can focus the campaign in your hometown. We have the flexibility. You have the control. Civic Media, 608-819-8255.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
The Supreme Court threw out affirmative action.
In a lengthy dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor spoke at length from the bench, in so holding the court cements a superficial rule of colorblindness in endemically segregated society where race continues to matter.
Not anymore. Robert says
we're
it
good.
doesn't.
We're good. You can talk about how racism has impacted you in your life and other spots of the admissions.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app.
Miss our conversations on air? Join the discussion on our social media channels. Find Civic Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find social media for specific shows and hosts on our website. Go to civicmedia.us.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Partly cloudy this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 86. Winds out of the north 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tonight, lows dip down to about 64. High of 88. Tomorrow, mainly sunny skies. Temps a bit above average Wednesday and Thursday with highs from the low 90s to the mid 90s. Chance for scattered storms Wednesday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 75.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And a wise man once said, live every week like it's Shark Week. Do you know who said that?
I don't.
Tracy Jordan. Well, it actually is Shark Week. It is the 35th year of Shark Week. Shark Week's been around almost as long as I have been alive.
Wow,
which is
that's one good way to put it in perspective.
wild. I can't say I am necessarily someone who has been like a Shark Week aficionado over the years, but it is obviously very, very popular. But it's been criticized for becoming more sensational and for presenting graphic animal violence. And the truth is, shark attacks actually aren't that common, despite what Jaws told us, despite what the news says. Jane, you're looking skeptical.
I don't discount that. They're the experts, right? They watch the numbers. They know what's going on. But I've been in at least one place where a year later a woman was killed by a shark.
Okay.
And That's enough for me.
For sure. And you don't live on the ocean. So, in Wisconsin, this feels a little less like something we have to worry about because the last time I checked, Lake Michigan, no sharks.
Sharkless.
But I thought it'd be fun. The Washington Post produced a 10 question quiz to reassure you as far as the actual, again, facts over feelings.
I understand.
So we will play this for the rest of the hour. Number 1, of the more than 500 species of sharks, only 3 are responsible for most shark bites. Which of these sharks is not a frequent biter?
Okay.
A white shark, a hammerhead, tiger, or a bull shark?
I will go with the hammerhead.
That is correct.
All right.
Number 2, where was the shark bite capital of the world last year? Was it Florida, New York, Australia, Cape Cod?
I think it was Florida.
You were correct again.
Wow.
Last year, 57 people around the world were bitten by sharks in unprovoked bites. Most of those bites, 72%, happened in the United States, and Florida is the international capital of shark bite with 16 unprovoked bites.
Can I just throw in
another reason to not go to Florida?
Well, there's so many reasons not to go to Florida. Does anyone ever provoke a shark bite? It's like, come on, come over here, I'm going to take you on. Aren't they all kind of unprovoked?
I mean, I guess maybe if you're in like a shark tank and you're like,
fair enough.
Well, I mean, you asked.
I
feel like that is a serious answer.
The vast majority of shark bites, no one's going on. Come over here, I want to punch you in the nose.
But I will say, if you think about how many people swim in the ocean every year, to only have 57, that is a very small amount.
Unless you're one of those 57.
Unless you're one of, yes, of course. But there's plenty of things that you drive down Capitol Drive that's probably more dangerous than getting
not anymore. I don't.
All right, number 3. What is the best way to tell if a shark is swimming nearby? Taste the water. If it's salty, there are sharks.
It's always salty.
Number 2, scan the ocean and look for a shark's fin above the water. Number 3, check for notices from the lifeguards on duty. 4, play the Baby Shark song and see if one shows up.
Those are all terrible.
Those are all terrible. I would say, what do you say? You're taking the quiz.
I'll go with the lifeguards.
All right. That is it. Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
That's true. Scientists like to say that if the water tastes salty, there are sharks swimming in it, which is obvious.
Always.
Yes. It's the notice from lifeguard is the best way to get information. All right, number 4. Which of these places are you least likely to encounter a white shark? Relatively shallow, knee-deep water, shoulder-deep water where you're bobbing over waves, close to seals or school of fish.
No, you don't want to be there.
Don't want to be there.
No.
Far off the coast alongside fishing boats.
You don't want to be there either. Give them to me one more time, please.
So 1, relatively shallow, knee-deep water. 2, shoulder-deep water where you're bobbing over waves. 3, close to seals or schools of fish. 4, far off the coast alongside fishing boats.
I'll go with the first one, the shallow.
That is correct.
Yeah.
White sharks are too big to swim in shallow water, and their prey, stingrays or seals, aren't often swimming there either. All right, halfway through. Which of these statements about sharks is true? 1, some sharks can actually get a tan in the sun. Number 2, sharks can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized pool of water. Number 3, sharks have one set of teeth for life. Number 4, peeing in the ocean or swimming during your period can attract sharks.
I will go with the drop of blood in the Olympic-sized pool.
No, that one's wrong.
It's wrong.
Some sharks can actually get a tan in the sun.
No kidding.
Sharks can suntan.
Do they have tan marks?
Maybe. Sharks are subject to a number of myths, including that they are these super sniffers, able to detect scant amounts of blood from open wounds or menstruation.
That's not true.
They do have a strong sense of smell, but it's no better than other fish in the sea.
Okay.
Number 6, what can I do to reduce the chance of a shark encounter? 1, stay close to shore. 2, stay in groups, whether you're swimming, surfing, etc. 3, avoid swimming in murky water or at dawn or dusk. 4, all of the above.
I would go with all.
I feel like, considering there hasn't been all of the above, that was like
that's pretty
easy one. All right, we got to keep plugging. Number 7, are sharks scared of dolphins? Yes or no?
That's always been a myth. So I will say no.
Correct. Contrary to popular belief, dolphins do not ward off sharks.
It was a great story, that they would protect people and dolphins would come racing in to save the day. And yeah, that's just not true.
Which of these water enthusiasts top the list for shark bites? Swimmers, surfers, divers, or boaters?
Surfers.
That is correct. I think it's because they look like a seal. The board from the bottom, they look the most like a seal. 2 more. All right. When a shark bites a human, how many bites does the shark typically take? 1, 2, 3. There's no discernible pattern.
Oh, ew. 1.
I think it's 1 because I think the myth not the myth. What I've always heard is once they figure out, because like humans actually to them are not that
tasty.
We're very bony. And so it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted. It's not like they can touch us with their fingers. Yes, 1. Shark bites are exceedingly rare, and when they do happen, most bites are single hit and run bites. Final question. If a shark approaches, you should kick and splash to scare the shark away, take a lesson from Batman and spray a shark repellent, swim away as fast as you can, turn and face the shark, then slowly swim away.
That they all sound like death. They all sound like impending doom.
Well, we got to pick one.
All right.
1 is right.
Number 3.
I don't think you think you're going to swim past the shark?
No. Okay. No, I don't want to do that. Stand your ground and back away slowly. That they all sound terrible.
I think that's the right one. Yeah.
Wow.
By turning your attention to the shark, you're telling it that you're aware of its presence and you're not another fish. And if you're holding a surfboard or some flotation device, put it between you and the shark. So there you go. Not that we have to deal with this in Lake Michigan, but if you're going to Florida anytime soon, there you go. All right, we got to take a break for the top of the hour news. We'll be back in a minute.
It's summertime in Wisconsin, and whatever the weather, it will impact you and your plans.
Should I water the garden? Will our event be rained out? Count on your local Civic Media radio station for in-depth details and the most up-to-date forecast.
Temperatures are rising into the mid and upper 70s under sunny skies.
It's your weather and more for your part of Wisconsin.
On your local Civic Media radio station and streaming on the Civic Media app.
Join the conversation with your favorite hosts or shows anytime. Follow Civic Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Share your thoughts on our social media channels wherever you are, whenever you want. The Civic Media network of local radio stations here for you.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. A day of demonstrations in Israel.
I came here to protest against the dictatorship that's becoming of my country.
Opponents of Prime Minister Netanyahu's judicial reform plan in the streets. Today, lawmakers passed a key part of it. CBS's Robert Berger in Jerusalem.
The Supreme Court would be able to come to the government and say that a certain decision is unreasonable under previous laws, but under this new law, it wouldn't be able to do so. And so critics say basically the government can do whatever it wants without any checks and balances.
Another week of triple-digit heat is forecast for the Southwest, and again, the dome of high heat's going to expand, according to forecasters. CBS's Nicole Scango.
In Texas, the governor has signed a law eliminating mandatory water breaks for construction workers in Austin and Dallas.
How are these people supposed to work in these types of conditions?
Velma Infante's 24-year-old son, Gabriel, died of heat stroke while laying fiber optic cables during last summer's Texas heat wave. She's filed a lawsuit seeking more than $1 million against his construction company.
In Greece, more evacuations have been ordered on tourist islands that have been overwhelmed by wildfires. Chloe Price, who just arrived back in Britain from Greece, says it was a bad situation.
We weren't allowed to go back to a hotel last night because the military had just taken over all the roads. They were moving people They were basically doing the best they could.
The Justice Department is poised to sue Texas over a floating barrier in the Rio Grande designed to discourage migrants. It comes amid allegations of mistreatment of some migrants. Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro.
If it's only a headline, if we're not hearing about this next week or next month, if there's no action that is taken, if the president doesn't say something, then I think it reflects a failure of American society.
In Montana, a popular hiking trail west of Yosemite National Park has been closed after a woman was killed in a weekend grizzly bear attack. Elon Musk continuing to reshape Twitter. Now an X is the company logo instead of the familiar bird. CBS News tech contributor Ian Scher.
Of course, the big question is whether or not X, this new app that replaces Twitter, can be as influential as Twitter has been.
A former volleyball player today became the first female athlete to sue Northwestern University in the widening hazing scandal. She claims she was retaliated against by a coach after she reported mistreatment. Checking Wall Street in the early going today, the Dow is up 183 points. This is CBS News.
Find great hires fast with Indeed. Their end-to-end hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in the same place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Looking for more local programming? Check out our website, civicmedia.us, to see our entire lineup.
With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. A man police say was suffering a mental breakdown led to a SWAT response in Delavan yesterday. The tactical situation unfolded after the man barricaded himself inside of a room at the Super 8 motel.
United States is for Fig Newton. It was named after Newton, Massachusetts.
Oh.
I haven't had a Fig Newton in a really long time.
It's because they're bad cookies.
Man, you're really downing on a lot of things that I like this morning. Jeez, don't yuck my yum.
Don't what?
Don't yuck my yum.
Got it.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time, this is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin! Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of As Goes Wisconsin. I am your host, Kristen Bry, along with Jane Madnair. And if you've listened to this show for any period of time, you know that we are big stands of any organization that is doing pro-democracy work, especially work that is crossing party lines, because, we also believe in country over party over here.
Yes, we do.
And so we're so excited for our next guest to be in studio all the way from New Berlin, made it into the Waukesha area, from Voters First Wisconsin, which has a mission to fix our broken political system by ending corruption and incentivizing problem solving. Richard Eng, who is the founder, chair, and CEO of Voters First Wisconsin, and Lena Eng, who is a co-founder and board member. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having Chris.
Yeah. So besides the mission that I just read, how do you describe in layman's terms what Voters First Wisconsin is doing?
Yeah, in layman terms, we just want to bring Americans back together again,
Easy.
particularly in a swing state like Wisconsin. Much more in common than we have apart.
Absolutely. And so what does that look like as far as all the different things you can do as an organization? How do you approach that?
When we first started, we knew nothing about politics.
Really?
I was a passive voter. That was about it. And so we actually had a pretty big learning curve. And so when we first started, we thought, let's attend the state conventions for both the Republicans and the Democrats to see what they're like.
And what year was this?
That was 2019.
Yeah,
I think it was 19.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was an off year.
Okay.
And it was so enlightening.
Can you say more?
I will just say that everyone was really friendly,
at both parties.
both sides. And the Democrats were very clear that they wanted to hear from everybody. So it was really interesting because they had breakout rooms for every type of demographic that you can imagine. And so that was really interesting. So, and then the Republicans was pretty simple.
Pretty straightforward.
It was pretty straightforward. It felt very top down. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and so then go ahead.
I think it is pretty nice. She's a passive voter, but I hated politics. Did not like it at all.
Wow. Okay.
I spent 3 decades at GE Healthcare. Politics never came up in how we did this, right? Global company. So then jumping into it and just seeing how we have all this headbutting unnecessarily was a big shock and surprise to me.
So what was so from being a passive voter and someone who hated politics, what was the point that we were like, we have to do something? What was the I'm trying to think of what the word is, but the motivation. Yeah, the Rubicon moment.
Yeah, for me, it was looking and just seeing this growing tension. And then finally, I think, Lena got tired of me yelling at the TV and said, you should do something about it. And, remembering the words of my late father, he said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So be a part of the solution. I'm like, okay, I better get off my butt and do something about it. That's why we decided to launch Voters First.
So that's really interesting to me because I feel like, I had a similar in 2016. I read the news and I cared, but I wasn't involved. And then 2016 happened. And I would say I was first very much more drawn to like Democratic campaigns and arguments. And I think I got not necessarily more moderate, but more on this side. It took me a couple years to get to, there's a better way to do this, that it's not just one side pitted against the other, that in general, there's more like pro-democracy things that we should be focused on. But I didn't start there. So why do you think that it was immediately, instead of being drawn to one party or another as two people who are joining politics, for lack of a better term, that it immediately became apparent that, the whole system is broken? Like, how did you get there first?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat from experience about how we work in business and just seeing, look, we're stronger together. You got to do things and just yelling at other people and blaming them isn't going to work, right? That's
Yeah.
just not how the world of business functions. So, we kind of have maybe a right-leaning bent, if you will, growing up as conservative evangelicals. And, our faith kind of says, look, we want to, spread out more and be more welcoming, work together, following Jesus' example. And so that was kind of the tenor and the tone of what we wanted to approach this problem with.
Got it.
Yeah, and for me, I was thinking, why can't our legislators work together? And my first thought was, well, if we want them to work together, we need to be able at the grassroots level to work together, and kind of a bottom up approach also. So that's when, we started to realize that it's also a heart issue too, because we were starting to see the contempt that was happening in politics. And when you have so much contempt, that really breaks down a lot of things. So you think about all the lack of faith in some of these institutions that we used to have. So we realized this is going to require a lot more attention and energy. And we felt like, we needed to at least try and do what we could to make a difference.
Absolutely. So we're talking to Richard and Lena Eng, who are the co-founders of Voters First Wisconsin. And so what does the work look like for you guys?
Yeah, so the work is really right now our big focus is on advocating for Final Five voting.
Great.
And so kind of a long-term journey. It's not going to happen in a quarter, but we have a very strategic mindset about what we're trying to do. And big thing is it has to be bipartisan. Like the long-lasting solutions have to be with Republicans and Democrats seeing eye to eye. The fact that this can help address the problem and really free up politicians as well as represent the voice of more voters. And that's something that we think is exciting and worth putting our time into.
So for people who are unfamiliar, we've talked about it before on the show, but we always have new listeners. And so can you explain what Final Five voting is?
Yeah.
Sure. So Final Five voting is basically, the goal is to change incentives. So right now in our current duopoly and our political industrial complex, they're very content with the status quo, because who benefits is, the political parties, even the media, because they get lots of advertising dollars when there's a lot of,
Wisconsin media companies are doing fine.
That's right, exactly. So, and we appreciate the media. Don't get us wrong about that. But I think there is a better way. When I think you mentioned earlier that if you just make yourself not as bad as the other party, you can win elections. We can do better than that in America. So how we change elections will hopefully change the incentives. And so Rich can explain the two simple changes that we want to make.
Yeah, with Final Five voting, really two key changes. First one happens in our primary elections, which for Wisconsinites is in August. And all we're doing there is just trying to expand the primary. So make it a nonpartisan primary where everybody gets to compete and the top 5 vote getters get to advance into the general election. So in the general election in November, Wisconsin voters would get to not just pick one person, they would get to rank up to 5 people if they want. And so they can rank in the order of their preference who they want to win for whatever office they're voting for. And what we're advocating for is only for the 2 U.S. Senate and the 8 congressional offices at this point.
And that's what the current, because there has been bills in our state legislature that have gotten a hearing. Has anything been voted on yet?
Correct. So the 2 bills that had been introduced last term were SB 250 and AB 244 did have a public hearing in the Senate last term. Did not get voted on yet.
Okay.
And so the plan is to reintroduce them sometime this session.
And so why start with the federal elections instead of the state elections?
So the reasoning for starting with the federal election is we want to help Wisconsinites get acclimated to this, feel comfortable for this. And it's easier for the state legislature to work with The federal elections, because it doesn't affect them. So we're trying to make it as
Got it.
easy as
So
possible.
they're not putting themselves out of a job.
Yeah. But we want them to see the positives as well, right? So make it as low risk as possible, show with them the benefit, and even in states like Alaska, where they have something very similar, Final Four voting there, we're starting to see people come out and say, hey, this is actually quite freeing for us as politicians.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned about putting themselves out for a job. I actually think that the goal is not really to change who gets elected. It's really to change the incentives on how they campaign and how they govern. And so we want everyone, and even the politicians who are voting on this, to understand the goal is just to free you up to do a better job of representing your electorate.
And that's really interesting. I would love, because we're coming up against a break, but I would love to hear more about the conversations you've had with elected officials on this. And if it's a fear of change, because that's what I think. It's like, it feels like everything I know about Final Five voting is things would get less ugly, because if you're not going to be someone's first favorite, you want to be their second.
Correct.
And so it changes how you specifically campaign. But I'd love to hear more about how officials have thought about this, but also how you think it changes how they govern. Because I always think about it from the campaign standpoint. So when we come back, Richard Eng and Lena Eng will still be here, and they are from Voters First Wisconsin. If you have any questions about this, shoot us a text, 844-967-2789. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
For the CIA, they wouldn't have.
Winds out of the north, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tonight, lows dip down to about 64. High of 88. Tomorrow, mainly sunny skies. Temps a bit above average Wednesday and Thursday, with highs from the low 90s to the mid 90s. Chance for scattered storms Wednesday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 79 degrees.
Kristen Bry, along with Jane Matnair, and we are talking to Richard and Lena Eng from Voters First Wisconsin, talking specifically about one of their key initiatives, which is Final Five voting, which we've talked about in the show before, but talking about what it would take to get it in Wisconsin. There has been bills introduced, have not been voted on. Hopefully get a little bit more momentum this time around. But one of the things we talked about before the break was the idea of Final Five voting and how it certainly can change campaigns and how candidates would campaign. But Lena, one of the things you said is that it could also change how they govern. How do you see Final Five changing how people actually govern once they're elected?
Right. So with Final Five voting, the big change is where the competition is. So right now in many districts, the primary election is really where determines the winner, because our districts are either so Democrat or so Republican. And so then the general election is when most people vote is not super competitive. What this would do is change the dynamics of the competition, because now the incumbent has to govern in a way that they're going to win the general election when most people are voting. And there's going to be 4 viable candidates with maybe differing positions. And so it's a little bit healthier competition. But if they do a good job, they should still do well.
We have a
The
text.
incentive is because you switch the election that matters from the primary to the general, you have to appeal to a much broader electorate. And that electorate, they want problems solved.
Yeah.
And so because they want problem solved, you're naturally incentivized as the incumbent to want to solve those problems. So you're going to be governing in a way that says, look, I got to get big things solved. And most of us know that the big things require bipartisan work to be done. And that is one of the beauty of Final Five. It extends that bipartisanship to actually do work and get problems solved.
We have a text from Michael from Eagle, Wisconsin. I am all for ranked choice voting. Why the top 5? How did you come up with that number?
Oh, he couldn't hear you. So the question is, why 5? Why 5 versus 3 versus 4? Like, what is the magical number of 5?
Yeah, 5 is great question. In Alaska, they use 4. We chose 5 because, 7 more than that would be too much. Most people can't really rank more than that, and fully evaluate all the candidates. 5, and if you go to the grocery store, you look at, different cereals, you can kind of pick 5 different cereals that your kids like and rank them. So it's easy cognitively to kind of manage that load.
Got it. So I guess, as we've mentioned Alaska a couple times, that was the big news last year. There was a special election, and then they voted again. And I think it was very big news because Sarah Palin was part of that, and she has name recognition. But as far as coming out of the special election, and then again, because the same Democrat won in
Correct.
in the November again. And so, as far as takeaways from such a national story, do you think that was a boon or an obstacle, like created an obstacle as far as people's knowledge and awareness of this type of voting, and also people saying, oh, this could work, or like, I like this? And so how do you feel like, was that a win or a neutral?
I thought it was a great win.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at some of the exit poll data, 85% of Alaskan voters found it to be simple or very simple in order to manage that. So, that's a concern as we do voter education here. So seeing that happen in real life, and then hearing, some of the candidates who came out of that, Lisa Murkowski, she won the U.S. Senate seat. She had a great interview the other day on PBS about just how it helps her govern well. And when you look at, the winner, the Democrat winner, Nancy Peltola, she's really kind of a different candidate, right? She was pro-gun, she was pro-choice, and she's like pro-fishing, right? And like that doesn't fit neatly into our quote-unquote duopoly, but that's what Alaskans want.
Yeah.
And she was a great representative. And then you had the hardcore, Trumpist Republican governor. He won. So it really, it doesn't benefit any party. It benefits what the electorate wants.
Absolutely. So beyond Final Five voting, what are some of the other key initiatives that Voters First Wisconsin would love to see?
Yeah, well, we were involved in the redistricting.
Okay.
Fight for nonpartisan redistricting. And, even though that didn't go as well as we wanted, it really it was a great initiative. I think that if we can get Final Five voting passed, I think that will come later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And come after even this potential, looming lawsuit that's going to happen, probably get filed in
Right.
3 weeks.
Right. Yeah. I said, I think Final Five voting allows our legislators to be able to make better decisions together and problem solve these areas. And we also are involved in reducing the influence of money in politics. I think that's something that it doesn't matter whether you're red or blue. I think people are just disgusted with the amount of money, that's being funneled into politics that could actually be used to go.
Money on the
Yeah.
50,
I think the final count was 56 million for the Supreme Court race.
It was just got awful high.
All right. Well, we only have a couple minutes left. So how can people get involved or get in touch with you guys if they're interested in your mission?
Well, they can head over to votersfirstwi.org. That's our website. And if they love the concept of Final Five voting, we'd love for them to fill out our postcard campaign, which you can find the link there. And that shows their support. Our volunteers will handwrite a letter on their behalf to their representative. Just tell us the words. We'll write it by hand, and we'll get the word out to their representative and hopefully make some change.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was super informative. And it's, like I said, we are big stands of anyone who is trying to be pro-democracy and cross party lines and get people to come together, because I am an optimist and a little bit of a Pollyanna, at least for now. So thank you so much, Richard and Lena, for coming in today.
Thanks for having us, Kristen.
Thanks, Kristen.
All right. When we come back, Democratic candidate for the 3rd Congressional District, Rebecca Cooke, will be here. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
That has been in search of you. Many lives has brought.
A Milwaukee police officer didn't do anything wrong in a February shooting that left a man dead. The DA says Officer Kevin Hansen was justified when he shot and killed Herman Lucas near 91st and Silver Spring in February. Lucas first fled in a vehicle, then ran away, and despite repeated commands to drop a weapon, he refused and even picked it up after dropping it, leading to the fatal outcome. Briggs & Stratton is in search of a new CEO, as Steve Andrews, who led the company since emerging from bankruptcy 3 years ago, has departed for personal reasons. The Wauwatosa-based company has named Christina Cerniglia as the interim CEO. During Andrews' tenure, Briggs & Stratton diversified its product lines, but also experienced layoffs and production shutdowns in specific areas. With news on WAUK The Shaw, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
Living happily ever after isn't always a reality. If you're over 50 and are considering divorce, attorney Andrea Gage with the Everson Law Firm can provide the guidance you need. Andrea focuses on silver divorces, the kind that get more complicated over time and present unique challenges. A family, multiple properties, significant assets. Andrea and the team at Everson Law have the experience to protect your interests. Call Everson Law to set up an appointment with Andrea today. It's never too late to be happy. Everson Law, 920-435-3734.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger. Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that some of what we do in government always is political. It has policy impacts. It has political impacts. But if your raison d'etre and your organizing principle is that my guy wins and your guy loses, the entire country suffers. That is not our call to serve. That is not what we raise our hand and say an oath.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Fear you may be missing out? We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. Enjoy listening live or catch up by finding the podcast at
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me. Getting to know
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And it's been a while since we talked to a candidate.
I know.
We talked to lots of candidates last fall.
Had to break out the ukulele.
And had a whole range of songs that you got to play. And we're already back.
We're back into it.
We're back talking to candidates. And our first candidate to talk to for the 2024 election is Rebecca Cooke, who announced 2 weeks ago that she is going to challenge Derek Van Orden in the 3rd Congressional District. And we're so excited to talk to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling super good. The energy is great on this show already.
We bring a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Or try to, even when pregnant. So I guess for people who, because this show airs, I mean, now we actually, because last fall we were in the part of the 3rd Congressional District. I think Wisconsin Rapids was in there, but now we have a station in La Crosse, we have a station in Eau Claire, and so we are certainly in your neck of the woods now. So I guess for people who don't know you,
sure,
what should they know about you? Yeah, who are you, Rebecca Cooke?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. So I'm a dairy farmer's daughter. I grew up over here in the Eau Claire area on a registered Holstein farm. So this is kind of fair season. I've been out already hitting the Chippewa County Fair, was at the La Crosse County Fair this last week as well, connecting with folks. So so showing cattle was a huge part of my background growing up. And I have done a number of things, but, ran a small business in Eau Claire for the last 7 years in our downtown, and also run a nonprofit that supports women entrepreneurs throughout 10 counties in West Central Wisconsin. And I'm currently waitressing, which actually a lot of people don't know, which
Where
is
are you
really
waitressing?
fun. It's a newer restaurant in Eau Claire called The Good Wives. They were actually one of the recipients of the Red Letter Grant. And so kind of full circle working with them. But, and then additionally, I run an Airbnb business over in Menominee where we do some pop-up restaurants. So yeah, I'm looking at Jane's face. I have my hands on a lot of different things and have thrown my hat in the ring and stepping up to run for U.S. Congress and finishing what we started last cycle. And I just feel like there's a lot of folks I don't think there are a lot of small business owning, waitress, Holstein dairy champions representing us in DC, but I do feel like that very much is the fabric of West Central Wisconsin. So I'm excited to shake things up and try to get some things done.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, you did run in 2022 and I should know this off the top of my head, but you got second right after Brad Paffin for the primary. So tell us more about what you learned in the 2022 campaign and kind of what you're taking into next year with this campaign from learnings of doing that.
For sure. Yeah. So last cycle, I won 11 out of 19 counties. So the vast number of counties and population centers like Eau Claire as well as Stevens Point, but especially like rural counties. And I think my personal narrative and story has really connected across party lines and with rural voters. Just what my background is growing up on a dairy farm and just some of my work experiences and lived in experiences, right? And so I think I was vastly underestimated in the primary last cycle. I was outspent by most folks in the primary. So I know how to make a dollar stretch, but I also know I feel like really how to organize people. And so we had a broad coalition of support, what we're kind of calling this time the Cook Coalition. Love some alliteration there. And so, like from labor unions, small business owners, farmers, teachers, students, we had a lot of different folks that were organizing on our behalf. It's a huge district. It's 19 counties geographically. So that's a lot of ground to cover. So we really worked a lot with empowering volunteers to become county captains. And so I think it's building on some of that momentum from last cycle and continuing to expand that.
And so how would you, not that we want to make it about your opponent, but I will say, considering who it seemed like he is and was, he being Derek Van Orden, and he hasn't made tons of waves since getting elected. Like, I think he's kind of tried to stay it seems like, to the layperson who is seeing what news rolls in, what headlines get made, he has seemed less of the Marjorie Taylor Greene Freedom Caucus type and more of a little bit more moderate in what is representative for your the third congressional district. Jane has something to say.
Just in my opinion, it seems like once he got elected, he dialed back the loon.
Yes, the way Jane said it. And so I guess in living in the district, and obviously you have done a lot of research into what he's done or has not done so far, like, what grade would you give him? Or like, where do you see him as like what he's been able to do or hasn't done since in this, first year and a half?
Sure. I think it's accurate to say that he's really dialed back the tone that he had when he was running for office, for sure. But you have to remember that he's an author and an actor, and congressman is kind of just another feather in his hat. And so what do actors do best? And that they play a part, right? And because there hasn't been anybody pushing him, we haven't seen as much for him to react to, right? And he's not from this district. I feel like people still don't really know who he is. He moved into this district kind of seeking that limelight. And so, I think that it's getting in early, like I've done, to be able to kind of hold his feet to the fire and to start to dig into some of the things that he's been doing in Congress, and holding him accountable. I think he's definitely hustling for the Republican Party leadership, for Kevin McCarthy, who invested a lot in his race, right? And so there's some dues to pay, but not really for working families. And so, I don't see him much out in the district. I don't hear about him a ton out in the district. And so it's going to be interesting to kind of see how things unfold on the trail and how we go head to head.
Yeah, absolutely. And how is the third congressional district doing? What are, as you're starting to talk to people, because it seems like ever since, because you kind of made it clear almost as soon as he won that this was in your future, if I remember correctly, as far as like, as soon as that race was done,
I sent a tweet out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so you obviously have been keeping stock of like how the people in this district are doing and what the issues are. And so what has felt like the things that matter most since the 2022 election? Has it changed since the 2022 election? Or is it still the same kind of economic kitchen table issues?
I think it is a lot of the same things. I mean, I think we're still dealing with the rising cost of everyday goods. Being a waitress, I'm really connected, I feel like, to my colleagues, my coworkers, right? Who are struggling to find affordable housing in the district, working to still pay off student loans. I think one of the top issues that I'm running on in particular this time is just healthcare and, expansion of healthcare, of Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing. My parents get their dental work done in Mexico because it's cheaper for them to do there than it is here. So it's like the very things that as we grow older deteriorate, why, shouldn't they be covered under Medicare, right?
Yeah.
And then thinking about, my coworkers at the restaurant, many of them don't have health insurance. And I myself am on the exchange and have catastrophic health insurance. So, it doesn't cover much. And so what are we doing to make the Affordable Care Act work for people? And lowering premiums and making just the process of getting access to insurance easier, right? And so it's a lot of the same issues, right? And I think from last cycle as well, obviously during the campaign, Roe v. Wade was overturned. So I'm hearing from a lot of people just having their reproductive freedoms restored is still top of mind for everybody, not just women, not just for young women, but for a lot of different people. And so this district has 6 college campuses and universities in it. And so we saw a lot of people come out for Judge Janet in particular, I think around, issues like that. And I think that we'll see a lot of younger people empowered and emboldened to turn out this cycle as well.
Our guest is Rebecca Cooke. She is running as a Democratic candidate for the 3rd Congressional District spot. Rebecca, I'm really curious about women's reproductive health. What have the men that you've talked to said about it?
Yeah, I think that this is something that I feel like folks have taken for granted for some time. And I think that there are men, particularly in this district too, that want to be allies, that don't want women's freedoms limited. Right. And so, I've been to a few different things, some of the things Derek Godlewski organized in the district, like Rally for Our Rights in the spring. And it wasn't just a bunch of women there. There was men there too, that just feel like this is something that's stifling women's freedoms and want to turn out for their partners, for their daughters. And, I think recognize the need for this, for those rights to be restored.
And how much are people also understanding, like, because I feel like whenever we look at a map or talk about the lack of maternal health care, it's a lot of times it's your district, right?
Yeah.
It is a lack of doctors and how far people have to travel to get, what the care. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon, right? Like I'm at the point of my
I was
pregnancy.
at the OBGYN this morning. So.
Right? And it's like I have to go every 2 weeks right now. And I'm trying to think for people who are pregnant in your district who have to travel how far every 2 weeks once they get to their 3rd trimester. And so has that come up at all?
Yeah, I think there's a definite need just for rural access to healthcare in general, and you see a lot of doctors that are splitting time between, more population centers like in Eau Claire that are spending 2 to 3 days out of their week going to smaller healthcare systems because there's such a difficulty in recruiting healthcare providers. And also you're seeing kind of an exodus from burnout with the pandemic of healthcare providers in general. So looking at how we can incentivize people to be offering those services in smaller communities and what kind of pipeline programs that we're building to incentivize people to want to become nurses and healthcare providers and not leave the field, right? I think that's super important. And, I toured a few different smaller rural clinics. We did a 19 county district tour last cycle. And so I had an opportunity to talk with some of those providers on what recruitment looks like. And, a lot of those are FQHCs. So a lot of them are federally funded. And so being able to just understand that and the role that I could play in helping to bolster those clinics and making sure they have the resources to really deliver what their patients need.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we have a couple minutes left. And so one of the things we always did with candidates last fall that we're bringing back is our speed round. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So we have you just,
It's all about cheese, Rebecca. No,
yeah,
I'm
it's mostly
kidding.
about cheese. So, first thing that pops in your head, obviously it's all about you, but
it's about me? Okay.
It's about you. Yeah. So it's so we'll just power through these. So your first job.
Waitress, Mike's Smokehouse in Eau Claire.
Boom. Person you would most like to meet.
I would love to meet Paul Wellstone, though he is no longer with us. Is very much somebody I admire.
Okay. Something about you that people that might surprise people.
Something would be that I've been junior champion of the Chippewa Fair.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Most recent movie or TV show you'd recommend?
Ooh, I'm watching Hijack right now. That's on Apple TV. Very interesting. Very good show.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one.
I haven't either.
Yeah, it's like new, so.
Okay, perfect. Favorite thing about your district?
I would say the natural beauty. It's just gorgeous. I feel like it's like a very kept secret a little bit of being one of the jewels of Wisconsin.
Absolutely. What's your walk-up song?
Dolly Parton 9 to 5, which I feel like is everybody's apparently, but I loved it because I felt like it embodied just being a hard worker, being a working class candidate, but it's so overused. And I'm like, God, I gotta find another one. Everybody's like, this is played out. So I'm trying to, we'll find
Do you give another maybe a less known Dolly song?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll get to work on that
I was
for
gonna
you,
say,
Rebecca.
Jane's pretty good at finding music. She may be able to help you find something.
This is my thing. We'll find you something.
All right. And then the last one is what's still on your Wisconsin bucket list?
I have never been to Door County, which is like a travesty. I know your face. And I was like, maybe I could go this summer, but then we launched this campaign. So maybe we'll try to get over there a little bit at some point, but I've never been. So,
To be fair, to your credit, but one, it's far. It's obviously on the opposite side of the state. But also, I feel like there is a similar quaintness to the towns up and down the Mississippi River that is very Door County-esque,
yes,
but not as touristy yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is like a similar vibe that
again,
you can get it in your home district. But yeah, I would say yes, you should go.
Yeah.
That is surprising. Well, there you go. All right. Well, you had a kickoff event yesterday.
Yeah.
Went well?
It went awesome. Yeah. So we are doing these series of cookouts, COOKE. So playing again off my last name. But it was great to just kind of gather people in real life to connect. I mean, we did this digital launch a couple of weeks ago, but I really feel like people want something to kind of grab onto. So.
Absolutely. Well, we'll probably have you on again because it's still a year away before that primary happens. So Rebecca Cooke is running for the 3rd congressional seat as a Democratic candidate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was great to see you guys.
Great to see you too. All right, we have one more break. We'll be back in just a minute. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Haven't you noticed?
Attention, Wisconsin veterans.
Hello, I'm Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin. If you are a veteran struggling to pay for rent, utilities, or other life-sustaining services, I want you to know that the Veterans Rental Assistance Program is here to help. You have already made a most noble sacrifice. You shouldn't have to continue doing so. We are here to support you. The Veterans Rental Assistance Program was created by and for people living in Wisconsin, with benefit approvals being issued to veterans in just days, not months. It's never easy to ask for assistance, but rest assured, we're here to help. You've always been there for us. We want you to know that we're here for you. Call 833-WIS-VRAP. That's 833-947-8727, or visit vrapwi.com. On behalf of the state of Wisconsin, thank you.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. And 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 86. Winds out of the north 5 to 10 miles an hour. Lows level off around 64. Tonight, partly cloudy. High temperatures reach up to 88 tomorrow. Lots of sunshine. Low 90s Wednesday with a chance for scattered thunderstorms. Mid 90s Thursday. 4-6.
Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has got a body like you, but I gotta think twice.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And I'm guessing you didn't see Barbie over the weekend?
I did not see Barbie over the weekend.
Did you see Oppenheimer over the weekend?
I did not. I don't like it when it's so crowded. I'll wait a couple weeks, but I do want to see both of them in the theater.
I think I'm going to see both this week. I think we're seeing Oppenheimer on Thursday, and I'm going with girlfriends on Saturday to see Barbie.
Oh, that's perfect.
And I'm very excited.
Will you wear pink?
I don't own a lot of pink.
Hot pink, it's back.
I do. That's not true. I have one hot pink blazer that I could wear. So I'll be like CEO Barbie.
CEO Barbie.
There we go.
That's great.
But holy moly.
Yeah. Wowza, Greta Gerwig.
The hype was real for both, I would say. And, as the joke I saw this morning was like, can memes translate to ticket sales? And apparently they can, because Barbie and Oppenheimer gave North American movie theaters the best weekend since Avengers Endgame opened.
Wow.
4 years ago.
Wow.
So both movies totally dismantled expectations and put up historic numbers. Greta Gerwig's Barbie pulled in $155 million.
That's the best for a female director ever, isn't it?
Ever. I think probably before that, I'm guessing it was Wonder Woman. With who was the director of that? And the first Wonder Woman was really good. The second Wonder Woman was.
I saw the first one. It was great.
1984 was not as good. And then Oppenheimer was $80.5 million, which for a R-rated movie
and that is
a historical drama that's 3 hours long.
Lots of chuckles in Oppenheimer, I heard. Oh yeah.
The fact that I think the projections for that was 50 million, so it just smashed that. And I think Matt Miller's going to be here for our pop culture update on Friday, so I'm sure we're going to get more into this with him then, but it's it's fresh now, so I figured we talk about it. But it's interesting to think of how much the two ended up feeding each other. Like, I'd love to know if like the stats that come out of like how many people did actually do the double feature of seeing both versus how many people just saw one or the other. And I also it's such an interesting time for this to have happened right as the strikes are happening.
It's funny that you say that, because I heard a comedian say over the weekend that what a great diabolical scheme by the movie studios to make sure that a large portion of the country is dying of heat stroke right now. Where can you go for 5 hours and stay cool? The movie theater.
Oh, well, I'm making a different point than I'm talking about the strikes of like, these are two movies that like were not made by machines.
Right.
They were not written by AI.
No.
They were not the Barbie set is a set.
It actually exists.
It's actually a set on a Warner Brothers lot that the set designer created everything that is in there, and it is not reliant on computers to generate something and actors to work with a green screen.
No CGI.
No CGI. And so the two movies that have now just dismantled what was before, held by what a lot of, I like Marvel movies, so this isn't my critique, but a lot of people were like, oh, these, everything's now just a superhero movie,
right.
And like real movies with real scripts and blah, blah, blah. And these are two movies that are exactly that, with like invested actors, invested writers, invested directors that are people who are of the craft of filmmaking and shown that it can be done, that really good movies,
even led by women, can bust open movie and get people back to the movie theater.
Yeah. And on top of that, right now, studio heads are like, no, but we don't want to pay you.
Unreasonable expectations, Kristen.
And so, yeah, so it's interesting as far as like, will there be any learnings from this from the side of studios? Because not all studios are here. Like A24, which basically gets nominated, like one of their movies, it's a small independent studio that, for the last X amount of years always has something that is nominated for an Oscar because it's always kind of gritty. They've come to terms with the actors. And so that is not a struck company.
Oh, wow.
And so there are certain studios and smaller studios that are, it's not all versus the actors in WGA. And yet this is I don't think this is going away anytime soon. So if you are looking for a way to support the actors, and a reminder, 85% of SAG cannot afford health insurance. because they make less than $27,000 a year,
which is nuts.
So the actors that are striking are not
85%.
Yes. The actors who are striking are not the people who are making millions of dollars. Like the actors who are striking are like what I used to be. Like I was part of SAG, and it's like you maybe got 3 guest stars in a year. You got a commercial here. Like you got some work, but it wasn't consistent.
And you couldn't live on it.
And a lot of people cannot live on it. And so it is trying to bolster the people who this is their life. This is their living. And yes, like the people who are at the top make so much money. And there's probably an argument to be said that they also could take a pay cut along with the CEOs of these studios. But at least they're standing with them. At least they're supporting them. But I will say, if you would like to, where did I get that information that I'm going to share with you? If you were wondering how you can help the ongoing writers' strike, the best thing you can do is donate to the Entertainment Community Fund, which I'll link to today's show notes. And that supports affected workers. And you don't necessarily have to. This is not a consumer strike yet. Like people aren't the actors and the writers are not asking you to cancel your streaming services or anything. But if you do want to support them by donating to that fund, that's probably the best thing you can do right now.
That sounds good.
Any update on the UPS strike? That seems like around the corner too.
That is around the corner, and it doesn't look like anybody's budging on that. So
Summer of strikes.
Yes, it will be.
Summer of strikes. All right. Well, thank you to our guests today, Richard and Lena Eng and Rebecca Cooke. Thank you to everyone who called in and texted in, especially in that first hour. We had a great conversation around who you would vote for. If you missed any part of today's show, you can always listen to it as a podcast on asgoeswisconsin.com/listen, wherever you find podcasts. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll do it all over again. This has been As Goes Wisconsin.